Yeah, as I was saying, this is a webinar in partnership with Sportplan and Ludimos. Hopefully, I think most of you signed up via our Sportplan email, so you should already know what Sportplan is. But just as a reminder, those that don't, we are the largest online sports coaching content provider, and we're committed to using the latest web technologies to develop systems, aiming to make the lives of coaches and teachers as easy as possible. Sportplan has over 100,000 global users and it's continued to rise rapidly. We cover a number of sports, however, this one in particular is focusing on cricket. So that is enough from me for now. I will chip back in halfway through, but not. I'm going to pass you on to Deepak, who is going to give you a brief background on Ludimos and in particular how that can tie in with cricket and yourself as coaches. So over to you, please, Deepak.
Yes, nice. Thanks. I'll give you guys a quick intro on what Ludimos is. But before that, I'm Deepak. I'm the head of AI at Ludimos. I've been with Ludimos for the past 2 years or so. My background is in computer vision and machine learning and building AI system to, let's say, apply for sports primarily. To talk about Ludimos, Ludimos is a 360-degree all-round cricket coaching platform. Our goal as a company is to enable players and coaches make data-driven decisions for player development as well as scouting. We have a web app that can run on PC, more tailored towards the need of coaches, and a mobile application on both iOS and Android for supporting the player needs. At the core of it, Ludimos provides an AI-powered video analysis tool. As you would know, video analysis in some form is used by players and coaches at every level in cricket and in sports in general in several ways, but mostly unstructured. With AI and our video analysis tool, we bring more structure into how you can use video for coaching. Surrounding it, we also have a suite of features for scheduling and planning, coach and player communications through multimodal feedback capabilities like audio, text, and drawing tools. We support collaborative learning through private and public groups where coaches in academies or clubs can share focused information through documents and videos for specific groups of players to accelerate their development process. Touching briefly on the AI elements of Ludimos, we started with a ball tracking capability a year and a half ago to generate pitch maps, speeds, and deviations of each delivery from videos recorded from a single camera, fully automated. We also have semi-automated tools for generating batting analytics like the type of shot played, the shot selection, footwork, etc. And the third aspect of our AI is biomechanical analysis, wherein you can overlay kinograms on videos to understand cues of bowling and batting in about a particular player. And putting these together, we have built an advanced platform to specifically search and look for patterns in videos and evaluate players' skills over time. And apart from player development, we have also a scouting platform, and we've successfully run several campaigns at big organizations at national level and even at the IPL. Our scouting platform brings, in my opinion, a much needed objectivity to the process where hundreds or thousands of players need to be analyzed and evaluated to find those few highly skilled players who can, potentially make it at the big international level. I'm not gonna go much more deeper into how Ludimos works because that's why Geraint is here and he has been actively using us and is a big advocate of Ludimos. I'm happy to be here with him and I'm curious to always talk to him. Today I think I'll leave more of it up to him and I'll conclude it for now. But I'm happy to take any questions which are specific to this platform and about AI. If you guys want to know more, please drop me a message here in the chat and I can pick it up later. But over back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Deepak. Yeah, as you alluded to, if you've got any questions, please put them into the chat box, or if it's okay with you, Deepak, we'll share your email address so people can get in touch.
Absolutely, no problem.
With after. So yeah, that's a nice segue over to Geraint. A bit of a biography. I hope I'm not doing you a disservice here at all, Geraint, but Geraint is an ECB Performance Coach. And is currently part of the ECB Specialist Coaching Programme. He founded GL Performance Cricket Coaching with the aim to identify, introduce and develop young cricketers throughout Wales and the UK. His mission is to challenge, improve, and develop cricketers of all ages and abilities using specialist coaching techniques. He's developed several talented players that are currently playing in various professional leagues. So yeah, I hope I've done you justice there, Geraint. But do you want to just touch on that a bit more? How you got into coaching, where you started off, and how you've ended up here, and then we'll move gradually on to how you started using Ludimos.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for inviting me along on to the call. Obviously, I started probably pretty much like everyone else, I would have thought. There was no one else to coach a junior team, so I ended up getting roped in to do that. And I just found that I really enjoyed doing it, and I really enjoyed working with lots of different types of players, to be fair. And it's just gradually progressed along. I wouldn't say a linear path. It's gone up and down. I've worked in lots of different environments, so I still work in grassroots cricket at club coaching. So I coach at a club here in Wales called Abergavenny, which is one of the largest clubs in terms of juniors. And then also I go into junior performance cricket. So I work with the regional stuff. I'm a pathway lead for Cricket Wales East. And then also that leads into then obviously first class cricket in Glamorgan and stuff like that as well. So I've been very lucky. I've worked with a range of different players, some who have gone through the system and gone into play professional cricket at the moment for Glamorgan. Some who have played in the recent under-19s Women's World Cup and also the under-19s Boys World Cup last year. And it's just been a really, really good journey. And obviously, as my journey's gone on as a coach as well as the players, it's been really good to develop and obviously enhance my skills by being able to use platforms such as Ludimos to help develop the players as well.
Yeah, and how did that start? You obviously mentioned you got into coaching probably a similar way as everyone has. How have you started to, or how did you get introduced to Ludimos, and why, I guess?
To be fair, I was just looking for something to help develop my players even more. There's lots of products out there. I tried quite a few of them. I used Coach's Eye for quite a lot, but when I met Maddie and spoke to him, obviously the big sell for me really was the platform that I could interact with the players on there through the cloud, and obviously through annotating the drawing, the videos and the drawings, being able to talk to them directly. I've found recently, in the last couple of years, more and more players are visual and kinesthetic learners, so they actually need to see what they're doing and then feel it as well. And I think, I'm very much of the opinion I film every session I do pretty much with all the players I work with. So ultimately they can see it. I can also go back and watch it. And that's where the beauty of Ludimos is that obviously I can upload it to the cloud. It's there. I can keep going back to it. We can have a bit of a timeline to where they were 3 months ago to where they are now. And obviously we can track it all the way through.
Yeah.
And obviously the analytics side of it, which really helps with the players. It just provides a lot of clarity, I think. And that's probably one of the easiest things and the most beneficial things about the platform. I think it just allows the players to have the clarity in what they need to do, but also shows what they're doing really, really well.
Yeah, nice. I think you touched on it a bit there, but what role do you reckon video analysis has on coaching, but maybe more specifically at what stage of sort of the coaching pyramid? Would you recommend it at a real early age and ability, or is there a particular group that you think, right, this is where we need to start using video analysis?
Well, I work with players from as young as 7 years old, so literally people who are just starting out. I use it with them as well. I think it's quite good because ultimately you can go side by side and you can obviously show them what good looks like, but also you can, I work predominantly as a batting coach with all the players I work with, but I work on 5 key fundamentals based around Toby Radford, who's my mentor on my level 4 course at the moment. So like, the head being close to off stump or middle and off stump at ball release, hands kept close to the hands and back kept close to the body at ball release, top hand dominates the back swing and back path. Obviously your head and body aligns to the bowler's stumps if you're a right-handed batter against a right-handed bowler. And if you're against a left-handed bowler, for example, you'd align to the bowler's hand. They track the ball early and obviously they make contact close to the body near the head from a stable base. So I look at a 7-year-old and I actually use the 5 fundamentals, because ultimately the way I look at it, even a 7 or 8-year-old, they can still hit 2 or 3 of them without realizing. And it's just great to be able to show them that when they get it right, that is what they need to keep doing. And the drawings and the analytics and the kilograms and stuff are really good to help that. Again, it just provides a lot of clarity. I think a lot of players have never really seen themselves bat on film. Same with bowling. And sometimes, the camera just doesn't lie. They think they're doing something really, really well, and they might not actually be doing it as well as they could.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, they think they're doing something really, really poorly, but actually they're doing something really well.
Yeah.
It just might just feel slightly different and alien to them. So again, it just provides a clarity to them to help them to obviously progress and get better.
Yeah. How well was it by the players when you first started to introduce it? Was there any resistance? And if there was, what advice would you give to coaches to sort of get over that resistance from certain players?
I think ultimately the way it works with a lot of the players I work with, I would say 75-80% of the players I work with now use it and use it quite well. You're always going to have one or two who are not going to utilize it to the full potential, which you could. But I think you just got to keep nailing the benefits of it and ultimately trying to get them to understand that it's a tool which is going to help them improve. And also it's also a tool where you can be a support network. So I've just come back from America coaching. I've used Ludimos with all the players here on the batting camp, and now I'm going to actually remote coach them because obviously you can upload footage to the cloud on their account. I can have a look at it and make sure that they're doing what. If anything looks just slightly out of alignment or out of sync, I can obviously raise that with them as well. And I just think for them, it just provides, again, more support, because that's the biggest thing as a coach. I think you're on a journey with a player, and it's not always a smooth journey, is it? Not everyone's going to just accelerate and go and reach the top. So it's good to have someone there who's supporting you throughout the whole journey.
Yeah. You mentioned you've been out to America coaching. Cricket's very much becoming a global game. I think there's a franchise going on pretty much every week of the year at the moment. And therefore, I think it's really interesting how coaches fit into that. Do you think we're kind of gradually moving into an era where coaches can almost work a bit more remotely, maybe not as much hands-on time with players? And does Ludimos allow that to happen?
Yeah, I think definitely you can work. We are moving to a time where you can work more remotely with players, but nothing does beat the hands-on sort of approach as well. It's always good to be there to physically see it yourself. And obviously you can get a feel for the conditions, what they're practicing in, for example, the environment they're in. Ludimos is great though, because ultimately if you can't be there, you can still help them. And that's why just working on the 5 fundamentals, which I work on.
Can you just remind us what those 5 fundamentals are, please?
Yes, so it's based around Toby Radford's batting, getting the grips book. So obviously he's got 5 key fundamentals. So the one is that the head is close to off stump or middle and off stump on ball release. The second one is the hand and the bat are close to the body at ball release, and the top hand dominates the bat swing and the bat path. The head and body align to the bowler's stump at ball release for a right-handed batter against a right-handed bowler. And the body's in a dynamic position to enable quick movement forward or back. Then you've got the batsman tracks a ball early in flight, moves to the finishing line of the ball. And lastly, contact with the ball is made close to the body, near the head and from a stable base. So like if I broke that down, the big things for me is where are they at the point of release when the ball's let go, and where are they when they make contact with the ball? So do they actually play it the finishing line of the ball, or are they actually not waiting for the finishing line of the ball? So do they push at the ball, for example? And that could be for a number of reasons, but Ludimos highlights that, particularly when you use the kilograms. So if someone doesn't hold their weight in their front side, for example, when they're batting, the kilogram will show that their body is going in that direction. And I think that's valuable for a player to see, because sometimes they're doing it and they don't actually realize they do it because it's so ingrained in them. And obviously vice versa, when they do it really well and they use their front side and lead with their head, lead and shoulder, and let the ball get close to them with the top hand dominating. Obviously the kilograms then show that as well, which is really, really good. And obviously just the analytics in total part, you know, where they've hit the ball, so you can have wagon wheels. Was it an attacking shot? Was it a defensive shot? Did they middle it? Did they edge it? Did they miss it? All that sort of data collection obviously adds value to the player, and obviously adds value to you as a coach. And again, provides a lot of clarity for them. I think just by using these 5 fundamentals, it keeps everything quite simple as well. And I think that's the easiest thing, which we probably should do more of, is trying to keep it as simple as possible. I think sometimes we confuse players by maybe going a little bit too in depth now and again, but that's where, again, Ludimos just really helps in terms of, you know, where their head is at point of release. I can actually take a still, a screenshot of where they are when the ball's released, draw lines on them, actually then do the same when they're hitting the ball, can draw lines through their head, their hands, the ball. So have they created a straight line there? Are they balanced? Are their feet going in the same direction of the ball, for example? Just clarity. I think that's the biggest thing. And even working with some of the lads who have played in the under-19s and stuff, and now gone on to play first-class cricket or playing second 11 cricket, the clarity side of it's really good, because they just want simple, how do I do this? And obviously a picture and a drawing and the video doesn't lie, so you can just show them.
Yeah.
I think it just helps massively.
Yeah, good. You said about those 5 principles, which I think are really key. Something that's quite a popular topic in today's coaching world is having a coaching philosophy. Is that something you would say you have yourself?
Yeah, I think everyone's got a coaching philosophy. My philosophy is quite simple. I want to try and challenge the players to become a better player than they were when they started the session. So, for example, I'm going to go coaching after this and coach a couple of lads I coached yesterday. Today, I want them to be better than they were yesterday, and just keep building on it. I try and keep things as simple as possible with players. And again, it's just letting them know that you're a support network for them, that, you know, ultimately they play the game on their own, but you can give them as much help as you can before they actually step over the white line. So I think if you broke my philosophy down, it'd be keeping things simple, but challenging the players to get better and better, and obviously having good, sound fundamentals. I think the basics of the game never really change. The best players in the world are probably the best players in all formats. If you look at people like Geraint Leach, obviously Joe Root, stuff like that, you know, Babar Azam's a great example as well. They usually dominate every form of cricket they play in. How
did you discover or come about that philosophy, and what advice would you give to the coaches that listen to this about finding their own philosophy?
To be fair, I've always wanted people to have the best basics possible and try and support them. That's like very much based around how I was brought up. So I didn't, in terms of my background and my upbringing, I didn't really have that. So I've always, being a father myself, I've always like tried to treat a player that, you know, almost your own child. So you try and be there as much as you can for them. I would say philosophies evolve and they do change a little bit now and again, depending on what environment you're in. I'm a very supportive coach, but ultimately, if you have to be quite stern and quite firm about it, you have to flick a switch almost, depending on what environment you're in. But I would just say, for coaches, if you're trying to develop your philosophy, think about what really matters to you in terms of what would you want to get out of it if you were being coached, and then obviously mold it. You know, it does change now and again. But the real core values that you have, they will stay the same, I would think, all the way throughout.
I really like that. You said philosophies change. Cricket is changing a lot at the moment, or has done over the last 5 to 10 years. Franchise cricket's taking over, to be honest. How has that affected your coaching? Without speaking out of turn, I presume when you probably first started coaching, it was a bit more basics, a bit more longer format, probably weren't scoring as quickly as they are now. Are you having to change the way you coach as a result of that?
Not necessarily. I just think ultimately you just have to be more open to ideas, and ultimately depending on what form of cricket they play in, whether it's red ball or white ball, they will have a particular game plan. And it's trying to support them to be as proactive and positive in that environment. So when we do white ball sessions, it'll be very much about exploration and, right, this is a session where you can try things. Red ball cricket would probably be a bit more disciplined, I would think, and looking around, obviously leaving the ball more. But in terms of the way the game's changed, it's just got a little bit more frenetic, isn't it? I think throughout, you look at even 10 years ago when people like Peterson and that were playing, he was a bit of a maverick. He just played the game his way. And there's always been people like that, even when you go back to like Viv Richards and stuff like that. Ultimately, I think you just got to try and support them as much as you can. It is a little bit more frenetic, obviously more focus on boundary hitting now, I would think. And you look at the X factor of obviously the team who hits the most boundaries in 2020 cricket, they usually win. But then again, if you flip it, the side who normally bowl the most dot balls usually win as well. So it's a good battle to have, but it's also that provides quite good clarity in white ball cricket, I think. Whereas in red ball cricket, it's all about hitting a good length. Obviously, bowling a channel, trying to make sure that batters, are really disciplined around off stump, and then obviously they bowl towards you. So it is a challenge, but it's quite an enjoyable one, I think.
Yeah.
I think coaches they can come into their own little space as well, because I think the way obviously coaches are going very specialist now. So like obviously I specialize in batting as part of my level 4. I think it's good to be able to go and embrace that as well. But also, again, it just provides so many opportunities to obviously make a difference in whatever environment you work in.
Yeah, nice. Cricket, yeah, often throws up challenges, as does a lot of coaching. What would you say the biggest challenge facing coaches, perhaps at a performance level, which you're at the moment, but also maybe more at the foundation level? What is it that you think, coaches are facing the biggest challenge, and what advice would you give to coaches to overcome that?
I think that one of the biggest challenges we've got where I coach, across a range of environments, is obviously I work in a pathway. Lots of kids are playing lots of multi-sports, which is great. However, they may end up going, the kids who are very talented at cricket are usually very talented at other sports. So for us in Wales, rugby and football, massive. And they're looking at it, and obviously they can see how much a footballer earns compared to maybe a cricketer. But on top of that, with everything happening now in the way franchise cricket's going, obviously cricket is going to become more attractive. But I also think cricket's probably one of the hardest games because it's so cruel. You don't always succeed. It's almost a game of failure. And trying to make sure that players have enough resilience to keep going, even though they're very, very talented players, is sometimes a challenge, I think. And particularly,
how do you develop that? How do you help develop that resilience with the player?
I think you've got to set your stall out quite early and just explain to them that, look, your job as a batter is to score runs, but you're not going to get 100 every time you bat. Your job as a bowler is to take wickets, but you're not always going to take wickets. As long as you can understand that you've executed your skills to the best of your ability that on that given day, that has to be enough. But I think it is a very, very difficult challenge as well, because obviously some people, they really struggle with that, don't they? They really struggle with the fact that I should have done better. And I look at it, and we even played on Wednesday. We had our first regional game for the pathway, and the kids did really well. They lost, but they first time on grass this year, considering all the weather we've had, they batted okay, they bowled okay. And like I just tried to explain to them, ultimately, you just want to see progress as they go through the season. So do they improve game on game? We had one lad, bless him, he was out first ball, and he's a decent player. And I sat down with him afterwards, and I just said to him, like, well, what do you think? And he said, well, I just missed it. I was like, right, okay, so what are you going to do next time? He's like, well, I could be in a better position. Okay, no problem. But luckily, he's a bowler as well. So, he came on to bowl. He bowled really well, beat the bat a lot. He didn't get no wickets, but you could see that because he did quite well bowling as well, it kind of counteracted against the batting. And I think, again, it's about just being a support network for him and making sure that, they understand that you're going to be there to try and help them through it. When it is tough, obviously you need to be a bit of a sounding board and maybe put an arm around them now and again. But actually, when they have a good day, you need to do the same thing and really not big them up as such, but just let them know that they've actually done really, really well. And then always with the caveat of could they have done better? Because you want to try and instill, right, you got 80 today, that's brilliant. It might have been his first 50, but actually, could you have got 100? And I think that works quite well with players. And I think for all coaches out there, it's probably a similar sort of story, I would think.
Yeah, leading on from that, we've probably got coaches of all sorts of backgrounds, coaching massive groups, individuals. Cricket is unique in a sense. It is a team sport, but actually probably it's an individual sport. How do you sort of manage that balance in terms of the time that you coach as a group compared to coaching in individuals? And is it something you're really conscious of? And how do you go about dealing with that when you're coaching?
It's a good question. I think we spend quite a lot of time coaching individuals, particularly in the environments I'm in, because obviously it's about their game when they're batting, they're bowling. But we do have a sort of like a team plan. So it could be we're playing white ball cricket and the plan is obviously 20 overs. We're not going to leave a ball. We're going to try and hit at least 2 boundaries in every over at the power play. And then if we flip it when we're bowling, you go the other way. So we're going to try and bowl as many dots as we can. We're going to try and take 3 wickets in the power play. Then obviously when the field spreads, right, this is the plan, what we're going to do. So the bowlers know, right, we're going to bowl Yorkers, for example, at the death, or it could be slow ball bouncers. You're going to bowl into the pitch and get hit into certain areas of the ground. And it doesn't always work, particularly in junior cricket. It doesn't always work in adult cricket, to be fair. But I think it's getting the players to understand that if they execute their skills, which they've been working on individually, collectively as a group, they'll actually perform quite well. We have a big thing with all the players we work with about not necessarily playing for themselves, but playing for the team. So yes, if they perform really, really well and say they get 100, that's brilliant. Well done to them. It's a great achievement. But if they get 100 and actually doesn't transpire into a good performance for the team, for example, and they lose quite heavily, it's kind of like counterbalancing it and weighing up. So where did it go wrong? Obviously, well done, you batted really, really well. But collectively as a group, where did we lose that game? So again, I think for me as a coach, it's just trying to strike a balance between how much do you pump your tires up, how much do you rein them in as well.
And I think you might have touched on this already during this webinar, but does that change depending on whether you're coaching a young age group compared to an under 19 player? Do you feel like you can perhaps be a bit more honest with an older player around selfishness with the bat, or are you very much same principles throughout?
I'm quite similar throughout. I think the difference is obviously when you, like, for example, one of the lads I coach now, he's been around the England under 19 environment. He's playing, senior cricket. He plays second team cricket. He's on the fringes of playing first class cricket. He does need to be a bit more selfish sometimes, because obviously if he doesn't get the numbers, so to speak, he's not going to get picked in that environment. So it is kind of weighing it up, isn't it? It is a difficult balance now. You can be brutally honest with him though. Like even one of the lads on Wednesday, he batted really well, played a poor shot to get out, and as we walk around the boundary, because we just go for a lap as a group, I'm just talking to him like, well, what do you think you did there? And he's just like, just a poor shot. Okay, well, where did that come from? He's just like, I just didn't watch the ball. I didn't really respect the bowling. And, you know, ultimately he was quite honest with me, which is good. And I think that's the environment you go try and get to. It's just being very open to understanding, you know, you're not going to be judgmental as such with them, but you want them to actually take on board what they're doing, and actually can they process what they've done. And also, can they actually think about what they're going to do in the next game? How can they put it right? Or how do they build on it? I think you can be more ruthless with, as they get older, you can be more ruthless. But again, it depends on the individual. I work with another lad who's playing, so he's under 16 now, played second team cricket last year, but actually played second team cricket at the age of 13. Two winters ago, I asked him what his plan was. What do you want to get out of this summer? And he told me he wants to play in the IPL and play for England in the World Cup. And big aim, big goal, fantastic. He's a good player. He went to Bunbury last year, did quite well. But at the start of last summer, I asked him, what's your goal? Thinking, right, are we going to go white ball route? I want to prove I can play red ball cricket now. Actually, back end of the summer, played second team cricket, did quite well against the first team bowling attack. Next game end, as a under 15, played under 18 cricket for the county, gets 120 not out. So I just texted him and just said, well, looks like you're a red ball cricketer now then. You know, but he's got quite clear goals, and I think that's the other side of it. It's about what do the players actually want to get out of it. So the ones who really, really want to get to the top, you can be brutally honest with, because I think they need it. Because actually they can park it, the emotional side of it, because they know that there's somewhere they want to get to. Those who are not quite sure where they're going to get to, I don't think you can be as brutally honest sometimes. But again, it's about how you manage your relationship with the player.
That's really interesting, actually. You mentioned about the white ball and red ball sort of balance. I think Will Smead, I know there's a few, but Will Smead, yeah, like at a noticeably a young age, has specialised in white ball cricket. Are you starting to see a slight shift in that, and particularly the performance level? And how would you go about sort of encouraging that? Because as you've mentioned, and we probably all know, the basics are still very similar in cricket. Where do you see that going?
I just think because of so many opportunities around the world now in T20, T10, so many different leagues popping up, some people will jump on it. I think it's a little bit easier to make it in white ball cricket than red ball cricket sometimes as well, only because you can express yourselves. You can be very, very open with how you're going to play, and you can explore different options, and you know it's not always going to come off. I think red ball cricket, obviously it swings around a little bit more. It's more a game of more of a mental battle and a technical battle around off stump. So again, I think in white ball cricket, mentality wise, is about being very, very positive. Red ball cricket is still about being positive, but you have to be a little bit more conservative now and again, depending on the line and the length of the ball. So, you know, I don't blame people for wanting to try and make it in white ball cricket. We've actually got a lad actually last year, he played, got 100 actually second game or third game in white ball cricket, and ended up playing in the county championship afterwards. And, you know, the opportunity came because he was so successful at white ball cricket. And you find that with certain players, don't you?
Yeah. It's definitely not something that's going away. I think I saw somewhere that rumours that people might be turning down central contract for IPL contracts. So yeah, I don't blame him, that's for sure. I am conscious of time, so we are going to look to wrap it up. I will just give those people on the call another couple of minutes just to enter any questions in the chat box before we wrap it up. One final one from a sort of cricket fan's perspective. How do you see this summer's Ashes going?
Yeah, be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how the two different styles go. I think England have got a really good opportunity to obviously retain the Ashes. They got a good side, as long as they pick the right side, I think. But will Bazball survive against the bowling of Hazelwood and Stark? It'll be a really, really interesting contest, definitely. I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm going to a couple of the test matches, so I think England will maybe just sneak it. but I think Australia will win at least one test.
Nice. Okay. What do you think to Bazball as well? I did say that was going to be my last question, but yeah, whilst you mentioned Bazball, what are your thoughts on that?
I just think he's given them the freedom to go out and play how they want. You know, be very, very positive. Almost transition from white ball into red ball cricket, but still play with a white ball mentality. I think he's just accepted that ultimately they're going to make mistakes. There's going to be the odd game where it's going to go wrong. But you can see it's rubbed off on the bowlers then as well. So actually, you know, they're just free, aren't they? So they run in, they bowl as quick as they want. For example, Mark Wood. You know that Jimmy and Brody are going to bowl what they bowl, but they can be quite aggressive with it. And I think that's what you want, isn't it? You want to try and again embrace it and encourage players to, you know, express themselves. So no, it's quite refreshing to see. It'd be interesting to see if any other countries try and do the same. But it's a great advert for Test cricket and obviously help, you know, rejuvenate it a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely brought it to life again. And yeah, a lot of expectation, excitement starting to build around the Ashes. So yeah, there's no questions in the chat box, which I actually think is a good thing. It must mean we've covered quite a lot of information. You can always contact us. Oh no, we have got one question. Good timing. This from Glenn, who says, I'm a volunteer coach for an under-11 team in Yorkshire. When planning sessions, do you have any thoughts on how to keep the sessions enjoyable and challenging with a mix of ability? We have some regional players and some playing hardball for the first season. Thanks, Glenn. What would you say to that, Geraint?
I think obviously that you can do the similar sort of skills. So, for example, if you're doing sweeping, you can make it a bit more challenging for the better players by obviously doing bobble feeds or drop feeds. The less experienced cricketers, you could go off tees to start with. You could have scoring zones. You could have cones out, or you could use pop-up nets. Or even you could play games similar with that, where the less experienced players, they could be hitting off a tee, whereas then the better players, they could be having bobble feeds and so on. I think it's a difficult one, but if you can make a lot of the drills or games competitive in terms of point scoring, that usually helps. And it doesn't necessarily have to be hitting in a certain area. It could be like for sweeping, for example, that actually you get your chest forward and your head close to the ball when you're sweeping, or your arms are extended. That's a point, because you may do that, but you may, you know, a less able player or less experienced player still might miss the ball, but they still made a positive movement. And again, I think it's just trying to make it as fun as possible. Really, that's a big challenge. You know, we have the same problem even in my club at the moment. You know, we've got lads coming through Dynamos and All Stars cricket, and then obviously hardball cricket. You know, the big one is like kids who are a little bit scared of the ball. How do you work in that environment a little bit? So, you know, transition from a tennis ball or a Dynamo's ball to a cricket ball. Well, you might actually go Dynamo's ball, Incredi ball, and then towards a cricket ball, mightn't you? But they'd actually be wearing pads throughout, so they just get used to it. Again, it's about just developing their confidence. That's the big thing. Hopefully that's helped Glenn a little bit, but I would go down the point scoring route, and I just go different ranges. So, you know, even the best players could still sweep off a tee, because ultimately they may have something technically which isn't quite right. Maybe they take too big a stride, for example. They don't quite get their head far enough forward. They maybe don't extend their arms enough. So again, I'd let them all have a go at it all. So I'd maybe go stations, different scoring zones, maybe have a little bit of a leaderboard, you know, do a shot circle, something like that as well. Again, similarly, for if you're doing front foot shots around the wicket, have a shot circle with different scoring zones. So can you hit the ball through point? Can you hit the ball through cover, extra cover, mid off, mid on, mid wicket, square leg? And again, the better the players, right, it could be a bobble feed with fielders in the middle of it. And the less experienced ones, right, you're going to be hitting off a tee. Can you hit the ball through there? So you're still doing the same challenge, they're just doing it at different levels. and that's the other side of it. I think with junior cricket and club cricket, it's difficult, isn't it? Because everyone sees finished and playing in the middle. So everyone wants to play games on net, and actually you have to be good enough and competent enough to be able to do the nets. So you have to work quite hard with the technical skills first before you can actually progress to batting and bowling in nets.
Yeah, great, perfect. I'm going to pull rank. This is going to be the last question because I'm conscious of everyone's time. This is a good one. It's come from Africa, so really a global audience. It's very good to see how cricket has grown from an analog way of coaching to digital ways and more modernized. However, in certain countries, places, clubs, they can't always do that because of the internet or whatever. I'm going to add on to that personally as well. What sort of advice would you give to those clubs, but also maybe coaches and clubs that have really limited facilities, equipment, may just be a case of bats and balls?
Yeah, I think in terms of that, obviously, I think in your head you have to have a mental picture of what good looks like in terms of like a shot, and then you have to look at it and say, right, yes, his head still is on about off stump, for example, so we tick that one off. His hands are close to his body, we tick that one off. But yeah, he doesn't play the ball from a stable base, for example, right? So we need to work on that. I think it is difficult. Like I was saying before to Maddie when I spoke to him last week, I actually used to start off with paper and doing wagon wheels myself. So like if the ball went to cover, right, I draw a line, the ball's gone there. And how many balls have you hit through cover compared to how many balls have you hit down the ground, for example? But it is a challenge. I think if you've only got, say, bats and balls, I think you've just got to try and keep referring back to what you think the technical model looks like. If there's like posters of someone playing the shot, for example, anywhere. So like, for example, Kuma Sangakkara playing a cover drive, well, does it look like him cover driving? And how close to that can you get? I think particularly as well in a lot of countries, like a lot of players model themselves on other players. So I'm sure lots of people have seen players turn up for sessions and all of a sudden they start doing stuff different. Obviously we got Marner sitting over here in Glamorgan.
Of course. So
everyone pulls out the leave like Marnus does. And you know, it's interesting because they've actually modelled it on that, you know. The lad I work with from England under 19s, he's modelled himself a little bit on Ricky Ponting. So Ricky Ponting did a talk about a box on a wicket. So if the ball hit the box, you couldn't score a run, but anything short of the box, you could pull it and cut it full of it. So I think as well, you try and get them to model as much as you can.
And then are you going to go out? Try and go a bit earlier. Can we eat a bit earlier? 12:30? Is that going to be a problem?
No. I think there's one more question somewhere as well.
I think it was a Ludimos specific question.
Yeah.
So if it's all right with you, Deepak, we might. I think it's dedicated to you, Deepak. So if it's okay, we might pick that up offline if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So I think that's all that's left to say is thank you very much. Firstly to you, Geraint, for joining us, giving up your time and offering such a great insight that has been useful for, no doubt, people of all levels of coaching ability and also just people that enjoy cricket. And also yourself, Deepak, for sharing everything that Ludimos has, and hopefully our coaches can start to understand the benefit that can have to their coaching. We will follow this up with an email that gives you more information and how you can sort of build those relationships with Deepak, and we'll share relevant contact details. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, everyone. Hopefully wherever you are, the weather's getting best for some cricket, but I'm not holding out much hope at the moment. But yeah, cool. Thank you very much, guys, and yeah, all the best.
No probs.
Thank you. Bye.